Love. Written by Liana Margieva. Translated from Russian by Anatol Kardyukov. Narrated by Sarah Bellingham. Reviews. Our Liana is one of the sweetest souls that the Russian bear sent us from the land of so many immortal authors. It is a privilege to count her as one of our dear friends. George Mateos. I'm impressed with your writing style. You do have the writing boiling vein. Your images and Alexis mingle with the essence of communication that reaches readers from the first line, be it prose or poetry. Your association with the master translator, Anatol Kardyukov, will open the doors of the English readers for your literary works, and millions like myself will enjoy them. Some writers have the tools to create great masterpieces. You, author-poet Liana Margieva, have the tools, the soul, and the scent to produce wonders. You write a beautiful and enjoyable style. Every time I read your short stories and poetry, I think that the great master Mikhail Bulgakov would be proud to live in your era. When Moon was younger. Andrei Emmanuel Ben-Davi Ben-Yehu. There is something always in the heart of your poems that reverberates in my mind and spirit as crystal bells. Your poetic talent is vibrantly creative and understandable, a balance that few can lay claim to. Your gift is surely God-given, old man. Your poetry is like beautiful bird song. Don't say. Richard Cederberg. A classical beauty. Love reaches the deepest recesses of the mind and spirit, and your poem reaches out and touches hearts with great passion. You have penned an opera for anguish, and among the rich treasures of emotion, clouds. Picasso with pen and ink. I wish I knew. John Willie. God has blessed you with such a magnificent gift. You write it so beautifully. This is one of the most beautiful poems I have been privileged to read. Your flowing words moved me deeply. Dedicated to Lonely Wanderer. Bill Gims, Jr. You write poetry of love and loss that reminds me of sadness in the epic story, Dr. Zhivago. Your poems are classic. The translation is legendary, a classic metaphor for lost love, dying in the snow. It took a genius to write it and a genius to translate it. I'm so glad that Anatol did, so that we can read it and understand what classic poetry is about. Rose in the Snow. Ronald Hull. A classic. You are a gifted poet. You write from your heart, and the readers feel the force in their hearts. I don't know when I've ever read a poem that affected me more deeply. I really have no words to describe the soulful beauty of this writer. I've never read anything more beautiful or deeply affecting. Incredible work. Drifter. You write so beautifully. Your work is impressive and stunning. This poem is a work of brilliance. Deeply emotive and beautifully expressed from your heart. The moon, breathtaking beauty, love, La Belle Rouge, poetess of the heart. Brilliance shines within your words. You write so masterfully, gorgeous, poet. You have a rare gift of writing stories, a serviceable villain. You write so beautifully and have so much talent. You are an artist who paints beautifully with her words. Your words and the way you put them together is pure art. You write with such beauty. Even when writing about sadness, you always touch my heart with your beautiful writing. Dawn Anderson. You are an extremely talented writer. Your words and passion are so hauntingly beautiful. An absolute masterpiece. Old man. You write with such power and such uniqueness. Oh, how I love the fullness of words and sentiment in this beautiful and heartfelt piece of writing. It moved me profoundly. Love. Diana Wiles. Truly blessed verses from your golden pen. Red bird, she loved me. Mary Ann Biddinger. Your work is wonderful. The vivid language and images stay on the mind long after the reading ends. Barbara Henry. Never read a better poem about that sometimes elusive thing called love. Love. Jerry Bolton. Your poetry is written with so much passion. It's brilliant. Solitude. Reading your beautiful words left me a haunting sadness. Carol Matthews. One of the most inspiring tributes I have ever read. Your poetic gift is amazing, like the man you write about, the poet of sad words, Don Juan Amante. Your poetry is stellar, lunar, out of this world. The moon. Beauty and sadness and wisdom in your poetry, as ever. Kenny Baez. I love your words. They are born from suffering. Paul McCann. Uncle Tom's Cabin by Liana Margieva. Masterful. Shakespeare's Sonnets by Liana Margieva is a masterpiece of woeful sophistry. Even Bill himself would be proud. Richard Ory. Your verses flow and tell a story of hurt and being unloved. Excellent. D. Vegas. You are very gifted with putting your feelings into words. Judith Pleasant. Your beautiful, touching, and sometimes sad poetry talks from a heart that has been shaped under a vast land of great skies. Your beautiful, touching, and sometimes sad poetry talks from a heart that has been shaped under a vast land of great skies, expanses, and emotions. Michael Guy. You are awesome, masterfully brilliant, the echo of the emptiness of a lonely soul searching the night sky. Elizabeth Price. You have written the most beautiful poetry, and to know that love eternal would be a star in heaven gives one hope that we might all find love when it is lost. Fog. John Lako. Totally mesmerizing poetry. You have love in your heart and soul. I truly enjoy reading your poetry. You are an amazing writer and always inspiring, no matter what your subject matter is. Amber Moonstone. Your writing has always amazed me. You write the most beautiful poetic words. Your words make heavenly lines, creating verses that accompany the corner edges of true love that spills between the shadows and a broken heart. I just love your writing style. William Bonilla. This is a piece of treasure. Shakespeare's Sonnets. David Young. This is glorious, heart-wrenching poetry. You were a brilliant writer. Don't look into my eyes. So tragic and beautiful. Christine Sen. You write with the hands of your soul. This is a romantic, majestic poem. The Moon. Dixie Dawn Michelle. A brilliant piece by a brilliant mind. Dedicated to Lonely Wanderer. Milton Handfield. If perfection is possible, you've achieved it in this moving, beautifully written poem. Your Drifter is another masterpiece. You teach us that there can be beauty in sadness. Jean Williamson. One of the best tributes I have ever had the privilege to read, The Poet of Sad Words. This is beyond wonderful. This is one of the finest tributes to a loved one that I have ever read. Almost too stunned to comment. Phyllis Jean Green. Any poet that can hold the interest, paint the picture, and create the intense feeling of being there is a master poet. And you are. This was spectacular. Death of a Stranger. Bonnie M. Probably one of the best poems I've read in my lifetime. Drifter. George Carroll. Absolutely beautiful. Music to the ears are your words. Music. The eternal story told in classic phrase carries its sweet truth where a moon shadows true. Wait, moon. W. Asher. You have a way of writing about loss with bittersweet irony and such accomplished lyricism. The tragedy of love lost with so many beautiful, almost Baroque images. The moon. Your poems often turn the most terrible pain into a refuge that is almost sweet. Alexia Mu. You are a true poet at heart. Tell me you love me. Shirley Long. This piece was not written with pen. It was written with the quill of the heart. Brilliant piece. This is the most beautiful tribute I have ever read. The poet of sad words. This poem left me breathless. Heart-stirring piece. So powerful and so beautiful. I am speechless. This is so beautiful. Your words are filled with wisdom. Truly unique. Inspiring writing. Shadow. Breathtaking beauty. Your words are truly inspiring. The piece brought peace to my soul as my eyes dance from one stanza to the next. Truly brilliant verse. The moon. Morning star. Love. A lonely gray-haired woman sat on a long, wide deck of a large, white, two-story house at the shore of the Atlantic Ocean, holding a coffee mug in her hand. She was not lonely because she was there all by herself. Solitude was plastered on her face and radiated from her sad eyes. The house stood well apart from other equally posh houses, looking as lonely as its owner. Gloomy sky frowned upon the landscape below. It seemed the Atlantic Ocean itself snoozed in anticipation of the sun, which would warm up the waters of the great ocean, and playful waves would play tag, rushing towards the shore. From her vast deck, Olivia loved watching the waves, especially early in the morning when the beach was deserted. The complete silence was disturbed only by the hushed muttering of the surf. In the evening, the sun sank below the horizon, painting the ocean in glittering gold. Olivia adored the ocean, its soothing surf sounds filling her soul with peace. It was the ocean, its mighty, spooky waves, and Olivia's affection for them that changed her life forever. Olivia enjoyed long walks along the beach early in the morning and late at night, near the surf's edge, even on the most dismal days when the beach was deserted. Olivia was always fond of drawing. In fact, she couldn't remember a time when she didn't draw, always lugging a burgundy burlap bag with drawing paper and pencils. She stood on the beach, facing the ocean, and drew the waves. On occasion, when the waves grew wary of Olivia's pesky affection, they slapped her feet, coating them in foam. Yet Olivia wasn't angry at the waves, who had no idea how much she loved them. For if they did, they wouldn't attempt to hurt her. Olivia drew one picture after another, as if teasing the waves by committing their anger to the paper. Besides the ocean, Olivia loved the seagulls, especially their younglings, who brought her particular joy. She enjoyed watching them run close to the surf, but as soon as the next wave rushed toward the beach, they scattered in panic only to run towards the water seconds later for no known reason. Standing at some distance from the younglings, Olivia would draw them with passion. It was those dear birds with frightened eyes, running in panic from the powerful waves of the Atlantic Ocean and flocking back to the surf as soon as the waves receded, leaving behind the hissing foam, that made Olivia financially solvent. She was able to purchase a large, white, two-story house next to the beach to always be close to those who she cherished the most, who could never betray her, the ocean and the seagulls. Every morning, as soon as the dawn began to break, Olivia walked to the ocean. Some insomniac seagulls ogled her with perplexity, unable to comprehend why this woman was awake at this early hour when even the sky wasn't yet awake. At the sight of Olivia, much to her amusement, the seagull younglings would follow her, so she started bringing bread to feed the birds. The younglings grew so accustomed to this feeding routine that as soon as Olivia appeared on the beach, they would follow her around like little children tag along their mother. Having finished her fragrant brew, Olivia packed several slices of bread in a plastic bag, took her large burlap bag with drawing paper, and left the house. The sky remained gloomy. The sun couldn't break out of the dark clouds. Light breeze caressed Olivia's face, briefly playing with the hem of her long blue skirt dotted with tiny white flowers, and hurried off to announce to the seagull younglings that breakfast was on the way. Olivia walked along the deserted beach, taking in the vastness of the ocean which was still slumbering, reluctant to awake from its sweet dream. What's the point of stirring the waves and rushing them toward the shore when there's no sun to warm it up with its love? A delightful fragrance of freshly baked bread from a nearby cafe touched Olivia's nostrils. She looked at the storefront. Blinds were drawn. The cafe was still closed, but not for the employees who were already inside accepting deliveries. Olivia knew the cafe's schedule to the minute, having worked there for many years at the time when she didn't yet own a huge, posh beach house and was nearly broke. She remembered well when she worked all day behind the counter selling delicious pastries, watching the Atlantic Ocean through the window with a mixture of grief and joy and dreaming for a better tomorrow. Though she was always a dreamer, those days Olivia couldn't fathom she would someday become the owner of one of those luxury beach houses. Now, she did own one, and she no longer had to sweat all day behind the counter to make a living. Yet her soul was in the same doldrums as it had been before, for the same reason: loneliness. Olivia stood, watching the building with its drawn white blinds, visualizing the interior: cobalt blue chairs around tables covered by thin, white lacy tablecloths. The counter to the right of the front door heaped with fresh pastries and the soft hum of coffee makers. In the long hall, there are tables with upholstered cobalt blue chairs. In the morning, locals flock to the cafe to enjoy a cup of fragrant java with freshly baked pastries on the way to work. At night, the place is usually packed with patrons who are no longer in a hurry and can hang out in style, washing down delectable delicacies with a variety of drinks. At night, the view from the large windows of the cafe features a light show from a string of exclusive houses along the beach, a special romantic ambiance. Yet the key element of the view is the Atlantic. Patrons love to watch the ocean over a glass of wine or liquor, to entice the observers, to make them happy or demonstrate its own grandeur. The ocean would often put up a show, raising huge waves and sending them toward the shore as if reminding the viewers that their blissful sojourn on the beach was at its mercy, for it was in its power to one day sweep those mortals off the beach and plunge them into abyss, the final resting place of many equally blissful souls. In fairness, it must be noted that scaring people wasn't Ocean's sole mission. On occasion, it pretended to be peaceful, its waters placid and non-threatening. Olivia reached a small ranch house, stopped and gazed at it for a while, then broke a sad smile and continued down the beach. She visualized herself getting up in the morning and coming up to the window to look at the ocean, as if to make sure it was still there. This was the very ranch house where Olivia used to rent a room from an old couple who lived with their daughter in the city. Olivia was, in fact, house-sitting in exchange for a room. She came to the edge of the surf, where flocks of seagull younglings were milling, who, when catching a glimpse of Olivia, immediately surrounded her. She smiled at them like some dear friends, took out the bread, broke it into little pieces, and proceeded to feed the birds. The hungry younglings broke into a feeding frenzy, followed by grown-up seagulls joining them at the breakfast table. Olivia settled down on the sand, watching the birds feasting on the bread. The sky began to wake up, The sun installed itself on the heavenly throne. Its cheerful radiance started to warm up the earth. The Atlantic was also coming out of its slumber, loathing to remain in hibernation for so long. Somewhere far away, menacing waves swelled up and scrambled toward the shore. Olivia took out her drawing portfolio and began to draw waves as their murky walls surged toward her. She kept drawing until the waves subsided, then laid down on the sand and closed her eyes. Several reckless seagull younglings climbed on top of her, unafraid, since Olivia had long become their playmate and never missed a chance to feed them. Failing to find any food on Olivia's body, the birds took off and flocked back toward the surf. Olivia's heart sunk when she saw the cafe. She could vividly remember how it all began. That day, she felt particularly melancholy since early morning. She grew weary of wasting her life day after day behind the counter selling pastries and coffee to the patrons. She was dreaming of a happier life, but meager finances firmly held her back. That night was no different from any other night until the door opened, letting in a stocky, gray-haired man. Olivia shot him a quick glance. The man noticed that and broke into a smile. He headed for a corner table and settled into a chair next to the glass wall. Although the man's hair was completely gray, his attractive countenance spoke volumes about his true age, much less than one could surmise by the color of hair alone. His gleaming, happy visage shone a magic ray upon Olivia's heart, filling it with a peculiar warmth. He wore a dark chocolate-colored shirt with white elbow patches, and a white placket which made the shirt look particularly fancy. He was wearing a gold watch. His brown eyes, under dark, bushy eyebrows, radiated sincerity. His face projected such kindness and warmth that one couldn't help but feel drawn to him at first sight. A young waitress approached the man, who made his order, then turned to the window and stared at the vastness of the Atlantic. In the growing dusk, multicolored lights illuminated the waves endlessly chasing one another. A while later, the waitress returned with the man's order, a whole broiled fish with a wedge of lemon on a bed of salad greens. The man glanced at Olivia, smiled, and picked up a fork and knife. He ate unhurriedly, clearly not in a rush. Olivia kept shooting glances at the man, wondering what powerful force was drawing her to him. Serving pastries to the customers, Olivia was unable to resist stealing an occasional glance in his direction. Having finished his dinner, the man paid his bill, got up, and started towards Olivia, who suddenly felt befuddled and embarrassed. "May I have 2 pastries, please?" the man uttered, breaking a cheerful smile. "For breakfast." Olivia put the pastries in a paper bag, placed the bag on the counter in front of the man, and told him the price. The man deposited the cash next to the register, gave Olivia another smile, and headed toward the exit. She followed the man with her eyes until she saw him getting into a large burgundy sedan and driving away. Olivia suddenly felt depressed. That night changed Olivia's life for good. She was unable to forget the handsome face of the stranger, nor his cheerful smile. It stood prominently in her eyes, etched in her memory and soul. The workday was coming to an end. Olivia took off her white apron, packed several pastries in a bag, and headed out together with the rest of the employees. She walked home slowly, thinking about the gray-haired stranger. If I was the waitress instead of the sales clerk at the coffee counter, I would have a much better chance of getting his attention, perhaps even getting acquainted with him, Olivia surmised. Perhaps I could even make the first move. But a man of his stature, driving such an expensive car, would hardly consider being with a lowly waitress. This could only happen in a movie, she thought bitterly, avoiding stepping on the yellow leaves falling from the trees. The fall wind was blowing with gale force, enjoying its potency and reminding the leaves that nothing in life is permanent. The same wind which shook the branches and relieved the leaves of raindrops' weight in the spring, expedited their doom in the fall. Merciless, it will rip them off the home branches where they knew the joy of life and love of the sun, fell asleep to the lullaby of birds chirping, confident that life and joy were eternal. Olivia reached an old ranch where she rented a room and sat on a wooden bench under the window, staring out into the ocean which was dozing off. The exhausted waves lazily, out of habit, rolled toward the beach, depositing their foam and lethargically withdrew. Olivia's passion for the ocean, her incessant observation of its transformations, had led her to believe she now understood the silent, ominous language of the great ocean. It seems the gray-haired stranger loves the ocean too, Olivia surmised, remembering how the stranger immediately turned his gaze to the ocean after ordering food. The stranger's charming smile was etched on Olivia's memory. Olivia watched the ocean for a while before entering the house. She was very tired after a long shift, with no chance to sit down. She was in the habit of going to bed early and waking up before dawn. Next morning, Olivia woke up early when the dawn was barely breaking, got out of bed, and came to the window, staring out to the Atlantic Ocean. She seemed to have woken up before the ocean had. The water was placid as if it wasn't there at all. She made coffee, had some breakfast, and headed out, lugging her burgundy burlap bag with drawing paper and a plastic bag filled with last night's pastries. Olivia came to the beach, sat on the sand, and proceeded to draw. As if sensing that it was about to be drawn in a slumber, the ocean suddenly grew angry, raised large waves and sent them toward the shore, attempting to erase the embarrassing incident from the drawing. Olivia saw the approaching waves and committed them to the drawing. Out of nowhere, the seagulls appeared overhead, followed by the younglings that flocked around Olivia. They knew it was breakfast time. She put her drawing in the bag, took out the bag of pastries, crumbled them into little pieces, and began to throw them toward the hungry crowd. Having had their fill, the younglings flocked toward the surf, while the grown-ups kept doing circles around Olivia, picking up the leftovers. After feeding the seagulls, Olivia paced the beach for a long time. The sky was beginning to clear, and the sun came out, finally waking up the ocean. The blissful waves played tag before rushing toward the shore to shower the seagull younglings with the foam, before retreating only to regain strength and return to the beach seconds later. When a wave hit, the younglings at first scattered, scared, then turned and ran back to the surf. Olivia got up and headed home. At 8 o'clock, she was already standing behind the counter wearing her white apron. The fragrance of freshly baked bread tempted the passerby. The morning crowd shuffled in, eager for the first cup of aromatic brew. Olivia kept glancing at the corner table, hoping the gray-haired stranger would show up for breakfast, but then remembered his words when he was buying pastries for breakfast. The cafe was filling up. There were many women with children. When she wasn't busy serving patrons, Olivia gazed at the ocean through large glass windows. In the turquoise sky, the autumn sun, having lost a great deal of its strength, was still trying its best to warm up the great ocean, which, blissful and lackadaisical, kept sending the waves toward the shore. Unable to resist the view, Olivia began to draw the waves chasing one another towards the beach. Disappointed that Olivia wasn't on the beach and unable to shower her with foam, the waves grudgingly receded. As the day wore on, Olivia's spirits soared. She was glancing at the door, hoping that it would open, letting in the gray-haired stranger. Indeed, later, when Olivia was packing up pastries for an old lady with a cane, the door opened and the gray-haired stranger walked in. Right away, Olivia's heart raced, and her face flushed. She felt that and chuckled with surprise, her eyes still glued to the man. The gray-haired stranger seemed to feel the vibe. He intercepted Olivia's gaze and smiled. She felt embarrassed. What would he think knowing I was staring at him? Olivia thought. A slim young waitress approached the man, wrote his order on a pad, and left. The gray-haired stranger turned to face the window and kept gazing at the ocean until the waitress returned, depositing a plate of chicken and rice on the man's table. Olivia kept stealing glances in the man's direction, but when he intercepted her glances, she'd look away and begin talking to the patrons waiting for their pastries. Once they left, Olivia started to look at the ocean, shifting her eyes frequently from the water to the man at the corner of the table. He is unbelievably handsome, Olivia thought. I wish he could fall in love with me and take me away from this place to a better life. The ocean seemed to understand that the dining patrons in the cafe were enjoying the view from the windows more than their food, and, to reinforce their awe, it would raise the waves high and send them toward the shore. Once the waves beached, they receded, leaving the hissing foam on the sand, only to be followed by new waves, even more terrifying than their predecessors. I wish he liked me, Olivia mused wistfully. Suddenly, she pictured herself sitting at the table facing him, wearing a beautiful pink knee-high dress, and he seemed to be in love. Do you like the food? He asked with a smile. Yes, it's delicious, Olivia responds. This place is so nice. We'll have to come here every night. Just look at the ocean, how turbulent it is. You'd think it ought to have calmed down by nightfall, but it's bulging with strength, which deprives it of peace. In this respect, some human souls are very similar. Yes, dear, you are right. Some people have no peace in their souls, not knowing what they miss in life, what they desire, what they suffer from. I know what they miss and what they desire, the gray-haired man says. They miss love, true, honest love. This place is so nice, we will come here every night. Just look at the ocean, how turbulent it is. You'd think it ought to have calmed down by nightfall, but it's bulging with strength, which deprives it of peace. In this respect, some human souls are very similar. Yes, dear, you are right. Some people have no peace in their souls, not knowing what they miss in life, what they desire, what they suffer from. I know what they miss and what they desire, the gray-haired man says. They miss true, honest love. Oh, yes, darling. I know what you mean. I am one of those who never knew internal peace. I always missed something in life, my soul perpetually dashing, always on a quest. When I first saw you, I realized what I was missing. Your face, your gentle smile. I could pick your face out of all the faces on earth. I will never grow tired of looking at your face, Olivia said in a hushed voice. I am glad I met you, and now I will be happy again, the gray-haired man said, taking Olivia's hand into his. 2 pastries, please, a voice said. Olivia started, taking her eyes off the ocean. The gray-haired stranger was standing in front of the counter, smiling. I apologize for distracting you from your thoughts. Olivia blushed, embarrassed, placed 2 pastries in a paper bag, and put it on the counter in front of the man. He paid for the pastries and headed for the door. She saw him getting into a large, expensive-looking car and drive off. Olivia followed the taillights until they disappeared. What would a man driving such an expensive car have in common with a clerk at a pastry counter? She thought bitterly. Olivia returned home, and, having settled on the wooden bench under the window, proceeded to draw a gray-haired stranger in a light blue sweater, sitting at a corner table on a cobalt blue chair by the glass wall. Across the table from him was a young woman in a flimsy pink dress. The untouched dinner was getting cold in front of them. The man was holding the woman's hand. Their faces radiated peace. Their eyes spoke silently about a great mutual love. Outside, the bright multicolored lights were twinkling with the mighty Atlantic Ocean behind them. The following morning, Olivia woke up at the break of dawn and fixed herself a breakfast consisting of a cup of coffee with one of the pastries from the cafe. She then packed several slices of bread in a plastic bag, picked up her burlap tote bag with drawing paper, and hurried off to the ocean. The morning was quiet, except for the distant murmur of the ocean, which was rushing big waves toward the shore to remind mankind about the breaking of a new day, filled with new wonders. The seagulls were nowhere to be seen. Perhaps they were still sleeping. The day was breaking unhurriedly. Far at the horizon, the sun was waking up, breaking through the clouds. The clouds, upset with the sun's conquering might, shamefully skedaddled from the sky, which turned electric blue. The autumn sun, which, in fact, lost much of its summer strength, was still able to share some of its warmth with the earth. As Olivia walked the beach close to the surf, she spotted a ship in the distance. She was following it with her gaze until the ship disappeared from view. It must be such a bliss to travel on ships. Some sail the ocean while others sell pastries all day long, Olivia thought sadly. If only the gray-haired stranger fell in love with me and took me on a cruise, she dreamt. Walking down the beach, she suddenly visualized herself on board a ship, sitting at a table across from the gray-haired man. On the table are 2 tall flute glasses filled with fragrant cherry liqueur. In front of them is boundless ocean. The waves died down to a ripple, realizing they couldn't hurt the ship. The gray-haired man stares at Olivia with the very gentle smile he had given her several times at the cafe. "Here's to you, my dear. Your dream has come true. We are together on board the ship. I promised I would take you on a cruise on the Atlantic," the man said, raising his glass. "My dream is to be with you for the rest of my life, to see your face, your smile, to look into your eyes, to be able to embrace you whenever I feel like it, regardless of whether we are on a ship or in a tiny house." Olivia responded. "You love me that much?" the gray-haired man asked in a near whisper. "Yes, that much." Olivia brought the glass to her lips. "I have no clue how it happened, but I fell in love with you the night you came to the cafe for the first time and sat on a cobalt blue chair by the window. Do you mind refilling my glass, please? The liqueur smells of red cherries," Olivia said and closed her eyes, feeling slightly buzzed. She visualized herself lying on emerald green grass under a tall cherry tree, its branches burdened by large red cherries. The gray-haired man in a sky-blue polo shirt is beside her, holding a large cherry above her lips. As soon as Olivia opens her mouth and swallows the cherry, the man kisses her on the lips. The taste of a ripe cherry and passion of his lips, silently attesting to his true love, fill his heart with bliss which radiates from his eyes. "Why did you close your eyes after asking me to refill your glass?" the gray-haired man inquires. Olivia opens her eyes and looks up at the man. "I was lying under a tree laden with cherries this liqueur is made from, and you just kissed me on the lips." Olivia chuckles. The gray-haired man gazes at her silently, not knowing what to say, before giving her one of his gentle trademark smiles. "I will kiss you on the ship with the same love I felt when kissing you under a cherry tree in your dream," the man responds, and takes Olivia by the hand, smiling and looking into her eyes. Olivia giggles. The strong liqueur gave her a kick. "It's weird that I love you so much. It's unbelievable. I can't figure out how it happened," Olivia says. "I need your love desperately," the man says. "I will always love you, even against your will. From the minute I saw you, your image hasn't left my heart for 1 second," she replies. "I will love you evermore, knowing you have such powerful feelings for me," the gray-haired man says. At this moment, something touched Olivia's foot. She almost tripped, then regained her balance and looked down. Apparently, the hungry baby seagull had been following her for some time, but Olivia was completely oblivious, lost in her thoughts about the gray-haired man. She took out the bread, crumbled it, and threw the crumbs to the seagulls. The hungry birds vigorously feasted on the bread. Then, having had their fill, rushed towards the ocean. Olivia settled down on the sand, took out the piece of paper, and proceeded to draw. She drew a ship where on the upper deck 2 lovers sat at a small table, a gray-haired man with a gentle smile and a blonde young woman. They were holding flute glasses filled with blood-red liqueur. A pod of dolphins followed the ship. Olivia finished the drawing and placed it in the bag, took another sheet of paper, and started another one. The next drawing depicted a tall cherry tree, its branches festooned with large ripe cherries. On emerald green grass next to the tree lay a handsome, gray-haired man in dark slacks and sky-blue polo. Next to him was a slender young woman with shoulder-length blonde hair. The man looked at the woman with love, smiling and holding a ripe red cherry above her lips. From the clear blue sky, the sun was warming the couple with its love. Olivia put the drawings in the bag and headed home. Her shift was about to begin. The cafe doors flung open, and the patrons flooded the room. Those who were on their way to work approached Olivia's counter, bought pastries and coffee, and rushed out. Others, who had nowhere to run, especially the seniors and mothers with children, took seats around the tables covered with white paper tablecloths. The cobalt blue chair at the corner table next to the windows was vacant for some time, as if waiting for the gray-haired stranger. Later, people sat on it, had breakfast, and vacated it for new arrivals. Olivia couldn't wait till dinner time, and the arrival of the gray-haired stranger she longed to see. Ever since the gray-haired man started coming for dinner, Olivia's life changed. With every passing day, she wanted to see him more often, and her waiting for him became more and more desperate. The day was ending. The sun was departing from the sky, leaving a trail of gold in its wake to make sure it will be missed until the next day when it will deliver its warmth to the earth. The Atlantic also knew about the day's end, calming its waves. It was no use raising the waves and rushing them toward the shore. It was time to gather strength for the following day, to warn and scare both baby seagulls and their parents who left their younglings wandering the beach all day long in dangerous proximity to the surf. Olivia kept glancing at the front door, waiting for it to open, and to let in the one she kept thinking about all day long and all night when the moonlight flooded her tiny rented room. Finally, the door flung open and the gray-haired stranger entered the cafe, heading for his favorite spot in the corner by the glass wall. As soon as the man sat down, he looked out of the window at the ocean, as if that was the sole reason for his visit. He was wearing a white short-sleeve cotton shirt with 3 top buttons unbuttoned. Collar edges and placket were dark blue. The white color of the shirt and matching hair made him irresistible. Olivia couldn't hold a smile. She liked him so much in that white shirt. Alas, the gray-haired stranger didn't look at her. "Why is he coming here for dinner?" Olivia pondered, smiling. "He must be single. Oh, I wish he was mine, and in love with me." She stole another glance at the stranger. The waitress approached the man, who ordered dinner and returned to the ocean view. "He must love the ocean the way I do," Olivia presumed, visualizing herself in his arms on the beach at the crack of dawn. The waves just woke up, lacking strength, yet they rushed toward the beach, cresting with foam, and crashed ashore, depositing the foam at the feet of the lovers. Olivia laughed, and the gray-haired man held her even tighter. She turned to face him, picked up the hem of her long, thin red skirt, and wiped the man's face with it. "I love you so much. It makes me wonder how insane love can be," Olivia uttered. The man peered at her for some time, ran his hand across her face, and said, "I miss this kind of feeling so much. I've been looking for you my entire life, longing for this meeting." Olivia took the man's hand and brought it to her lips. "I will always love you. You don't have to look for me anymore. I'm here with you," she uttered, and laid down on the sand next to him. The gray-haired man laid down beside Olivia. She put her head on his chest, and he embraced her. The beach was quiet. Even the omnipresent, hungry baby gulls were nowhere in sight. The only disquiet element was the ocean, which raised the waves and sent them toward the shore, as if it was displeased with, even angry about something. But Olivia was so happy. She snuggled next to her loved one, and she wasn't a bit concerned with the reason for the ocean's enmity. "May I have 2 pastries, please?" Olivia heard suddenly, and abruptly took her gaze off the ocean view. The gray-haired stranger stood in front of the counter, his trademark smile on his face. "Once again, I've distracted you from your dreams," he continued. Blushing with embarrassment, Olivia packed 2 pastries in a paper bag and placed it in front of the patron. Knowing the price well, the gray-haired man deposited the exact change next to the cash register and headed for the door. Olivia watched the man get into a large burgundy sedan and drive off. "May I also have a couple pastries?" a woman with a cane asked. Olivia started, then packed 2 pastries in a paper bag and handed it to the customer. "Your pastries are so delicious. I come here every day," the woman said, placing the money on the counter. "Oh, yes, they are. Everyone loves them." Olivia smiled, but right away her face darkened. Having served everyone in line, Olivia gazed at the cobalt blue chair in the corner next to a glass wall. "Someday, I will become rich, very rich, selling my drawings, and he will notice me," Olivia mused. "When one is a pauper, no one needs you. I must continue drawing if I want to change my destiny and be with that gray-haired stranger." Olivia returned home, grabbing some drawing paper, settled on the old wooden bench in the yard, and began to draw. She drew a huge 2-story white house with a wraparound deck, with a canopy and a wooden table with several cobalt blue upholstered chairs. One of the chairs was occupied by the gray-haired stranger, his face beaming with bliss. He was wearing a long-sleeved chocolate-colored shirt with white inserts on the elbows. He was busy taking in the view of the vast Atlantic Ocean opening from the deck. Tall waves chased one another on their way to the shore, attempting to scare everyone. Yet the gray-haired man was smiling with confidence. The waves couldn't scare him, for Olivia's love would, for sure, save him not only from the ocean waves, but from the turbulence of life as well. Olivia was completely bewildered by the fact that she'd fallen in love with the man, not knowing what his name was. Perhaps that is how true love is born, for no reason, without any rational explanation. All day long, standing behind the counter, selling pastries and coffee, Olivia impatiently waited for the moment when the door opened and the gray-haired man came in for dinner. From the instant he entered the cafe, Olivia's soul filled up with joy, her face beaming with excitement. And every time the man left the cafe and left the money on the counter, having bought his customary pastries and behaving like a complete stranger, she became very upset. Yet how could it be otherwise? What would a handsome man in expensive attire, driving a fancy car, have in common with her, a lowly pastry vendor? I must change my life, Olivia thought desperately. I must do it, or he will never be with me. But what can I do to become wealthy? All I can do is draw. Yet some artists manage to get out of poverty by selling their paintings. She pondered frequently on the beach in the company of baby seagulls. One evening after work, when Olivia sat on the beach and reflected upon her life, she suddenly visualized herself becoming an accomplished artist, with connoisseurs lining up to pay huge premiums for her paintings. She no longer needs to sell pastries for a living, and buys an expensive oceanfront mansion. The gray-haired man comes to the cafe for dinner, settling on his favorite chair in the corner next to the glass wall, glances at the ocean, then abruptly turns to the counter with coffee and pastries, but doesn't see Olivia at her usual spot. Instead, an older woman was behind the counter. A slim waitress approaches the man, but instead of ordering dinner, he utters excitedly, "Where is the girl who was selling pastries?" "She doesn't work here anymore," the waitress replies. "She made a fortune on her paintings and bought a huge mansion on the ocean front. She lives nearby and likes walking on the beach, so you can often find her there." "You know," the gray-haired man confesses, "I was buying pastries for the sole reason of approaching her, and all of a sudden she disappears." "Don't you worry," the waitress says cheerfully. "Chances are you'll find her on the beach." The gray-haired man quickly leaves the cafe and heads for the beach, but there is no one in sight as far as he can see. Suddenly, a lone woman appears in the distance. It is Olivia. She walks the beach at an unhurried pace because she has nowhere to rush. She now owned a fortune and didn't have to work anymore. The man rushes towards Olivia, and she stops as soon as she sees him. She doesn't know what to say. She can't believe her eyes. "I was afraid I wouldn't see you anymore," the man utters. "I was buying your pastries because I wanted to be close to you, to see you, to hear your voice." Olivia's eyes tear. "Likewise, I was afraid I wouldn't see you. I don't work at the cafe anymore. I bought that huge mansion over there, but it feels empty and cheerless without you, just like my life. This mansion needs your presence. It will remain dreary without you in it," Olivia quips, wiping her tears. "I loved you the instant I saw you standing behind the counter selling pastries to an old woman with a little girl," the gray-haired man says, and wipes the remaining tears from Olivia's face with his hand. "And I was so afraid that you'd never fall in love with me, because I was but a lowly pastry vendor," Olivia confesses, attempting to smile through her tears. The gray-haired man puts his arms around her and holds her tight. "I will always love you regardless of what you do. You are the only one I need," the man says. Olivia laughs gleefully. "I never showed it, but I fell in love with you that first night you came for dinner." The gray-haired man holds Olivia's head in his hands, covering her entire face with kisses. Olivia started. One of the baby gulls pecked her hand, letting her know it was time to stop dreaming and serve the food. She took out the bag with bread, crumbled it, and threw it into the flock of eager avians gathered around her. The grown-up gulls picked up morsels and took off at a safe distance, but baby gulls seemed completely unafraid, milling at Olivia's feet until the last crumb was gone, then happily trotted toward the surf. From her burlap bag, Olivia took out her drawing paper and proceeded to draw. On the beach of the Atlantic Ocean, a gray-haired man was holding in his arms a young woman in a burgundy skirt, kissing her passionately. The man was holding the woman in his arms so tightly, as if he was afraid that the waves could claim his prized possession. The gulls flew over the lovers' heads, screaming triumphantly, celebrating their reunion. One night, the gray-haired man showed up in the company of another man of his age. They sat at the table by the window and animatedly discussed something for a while. The gray-haired man appeared distraught. Leaving the cafe, the man did not buy pastries for breakfast and never once looked in Olivia's direction, which made her very upset. On the following day, Olivia impatiently waited for the evening to see the gray-haired man. She was astonished by the strength of attraction she felt for the man. Every time the front door opened, Olivia's heart began to race with joy, anticipating the arrival of the gray-haired man. Alas, the man failed to show up that night. His table was occupied by a young couple who were laughing and having a good time. Olivia's eyes teared. She had no reason to rejoice. Suddenly, a horrible thought shocked her. What if he would never come back? At that instant, Olivia realized how much in love she was with the man whose name she never knew. After returning home, Olivia sat in the front yard for a long time, watching the waves race to the shore to spill their anger upon the baby seagulls. And, having found none, and feeling even more outraged, withdraw into the ocean only to return seconds later. In fact, the baby seagulls couldn't care less about the ire of the ocean. They were fast asleep somewhere safe. Suddenly, Olivia visualized the waves wash ashore a paddle boat, in which was the gray-haired man who had loved Olivia for a long time. Fully aware of his feelings and loving the man even more for this, Olivia ran toward the boat. The boat beached. The gray-haired man jumped out of it and straight into Olivia's arms. The waves, jealous of their happiness, angrily sprayed them with foam. Holding each other tight, the lovers laughed heartily. "I've been waiting for you since morning, afraid that you may not come. The ocean can't seem to calm down today, as if on purpose to make me suffer," Olivia was saying, covering the man's face with kisses. "Waves were powerless to stop me. My love is stronger than the waves, but they don't know that," the man said, smiling. He sat on the sand, overtaken by exhaustion. Olivia settled next to him. "It is a bliss to have you near." The gray-haired man laid down on the sand. Olivia snuggled up to the man, placing her head on his chest. He held her tightly and kissed her on the head. "We will always live by the ocean in a big mansion with a huge wraparound deck. I will keep drawing the Atlantic Ocean until its waves bring me enough money to buy a mansion where you and me will spend the rest of our lives together," Olivia said, holding the man even tighter. "Apparently you like to dream," the gray-haired man said, again kissing Olivia on the head. "My dream will come true. I will become successful and rich because I have no choice," Olivia quipped, knowing she had no chance of being with him if she kept selling pastries at the cafe. The stars twinkled above their heads, some brighter, others dimmer. Some were, perhaps, happy for Olivia, on account of her being a dreamer, made strong by hopelessness. Others were somber, implying that big mansions don't always guarantee happiness. The Atlantic Ocean was pushing waves with utmost ferocity, suggesting that their fearless crests could take the bliss back to the abyss with the same ease they landed it ashore. The following day, Olivia finished the drawing. Somewhere far away, in the middle of the ocean, enormous waves rolled, carrying a paddle boat with the gray-haired man. A blonde young woman stood on the beach, knee-deep in foam, her hands raised as if she was praying for the life of the man paddling in her direction. All day long, Olivia thought about the gray-haired man, wondering if he would come for dinner. When, finally, the door opened, letting in the welcome visitor, Olivia was overcome with such joy that the man looked at her with bewilderment. She instantly blushed, embarrassed, and initiated a trivial conversation with some female pastry addict at the counter in order to conceal her elation. "Aren't our pastries delicious?" Olivia asked the woman. "Oh, they're amazing. I buy them every day. I start my morning with your pastries and coffee." the woman replied with a cordial smile, picking up a paper bag with pastries. Alone at the counter, Olivia kept shooting glances at the gray-haired man, but the instant he shifted his gaze from the ocean view, she stared at the register, pretending to be busy. A waitress approached the man,